We are live. Hi, Mark.
Nice. Good to see you again, Christian.
Great to have another podcast on Friday. So we just started the tradition for the Friday podcast with different teams. And what's the theme today, Mark?
Today, we're going to be talking about parenting in the digital age and how technology has almost come to become a third parent, right? A lot of people turning, with children in particular, turning to GPTs, ChatGPT, Anthropic, a lot of different LLMs in an attempt to answer questions that traditionally parents would answer. And what effect is this having on the future generation? So I think if you're a parent and you're watching this, you're going to get a lot of value from the discussion that Christian and I are going to have today. And please, throughout the conversation, we welcome all questions. Just feel free to drop it in the questions section. We'll get to it. We're going to answer questions throughout the conversation. And Christian, you are a parent yourself, so I think you might have more to offer in this discussion than me. I will be a future parent, but right now I can only speculate about the effects that technology is having on children, and perhaps there are a lot of parents who are watching this who are perhaps worried about what sort of effect does using TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit 6, 7, 8 hours a day on children. What does that have long term? So we're going to get into some studies here. We're going to talk about what scientists have found, what have they come up with, what are some possible threats that technology pose towards the development of children. And I'm really excited to be talking with you again today.
Always, Mark. And for those joining who don't know, Mark Ritter is the co-founder and CEO of AWE, or AW Digital Wellness. And I'm the co-founder as well. We're both psychologists and neuroscientists and friends, and love to chat about any cool subjects. So let's get right into it. Again, if you're watching us on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, any channel you want to comment, please do so, and we'll try to respond accordingly. I had a quote just to start it off, and this is from a study called Parenting in a Technological Age. That's from Smith from the University of Leuven in Belgium, and that is in 2008, and it already said, technology we once managed has come to manage us. So that was before the smartphone, and technology was already starting to manage us. So what's happening now in 2025?
Oh, well, lots of developments. Probably the biggest one being the age of AI. In the last 2 years, and becoming much more invasive, intrusive, knowing much more about us than we perhaps even know about ourselves, essentially. And traditionally, this was used for advertiser data. So the more granular, the more that advertisers actually knew about you, the better that they could create targeting campaigns, right? If you searched for towels on Google, Amazon would know that you're searching for towels, and they would show you advertisements for towels, right? But if you have children, right, searching for, I don't know, skateboards or perhaps even music, online concert venues, these algorithms are getting a very, very good understanding of kids' behavior. And nowadays, we just need to face the reality that the internet has become ubiquitous in all of our lives. And so children approach this, they interface with the world in a way that is mostly based on learning, development, and a lot of these algorithms, companies at the end of the day are trying to make profit. And so they're trying to manipulate, perhaps not uh, inadvertently, right, children to change their behavior in a certain way that is going to conform to their advertising preferences. So it's become a lot more invasive, I would say, and this is what we call the age of surveillance capitalism. And it's a little bit of a worrying trend, I would say, and that's why I do advocate for some guardrails on a lot of this technology.
Inadvertently, you're very, very kind, Mark, to the psychologists and marketer that are targeting us adults and the children.
Mm,
Yes, I do have a teenager, and I have some lived experience. But hopefully, knock on wood, he's still doing okay. One of the things that I was reading, it's a study that talks about social medias, particularly and advertising, and
Hmm.
mentions that media know how to talk to children, know how to talk to adults, and they're often portraying what we call risky behavior. So, risk for your mental health, your physical health, in a way that is less risky in advertisement than in reality, right? So, and I would say that teenagers and children have less the capacity to abstract and to really look at danger. Um, how do you construe this in terms of what content or children watching, teenagers watching, and how that affects their perception of self and the world?
Well, essentially, the most popular platform amongst teenagers and children nowadays is by a mile TikTok, right? And the reason it's so popular is that the short form content is shown to children in a way that is based on the algorithm. The TikTok algorithm is the most advanced that there is on any platform out there. And so kids, they are looking for enjoyment and probably a relief from boredom whenever they can, right? And the accessibility of this media is just larger than ever. So kids with phone, they can get it out and they can just stare at TikTok all day long, scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Whereas perhaps 15, 20 years ago, boredom was the impetus to actually go out and explore the world, to go into the woods, to go for a walk, to play with your neighbors outside. So um, I would say that the effects are really secondary. So if you're scrolling on TikTok and you have an algorithm that is engineered to be as addictive as possible by the smartest minds in the world, the result is a child who perhaps isolates themselves, who perhaps thinks that they're supplanting, that need for connection by having friends or by watching influencers online. But at the end of the day, they're still in their room alone, right? They've closed the door. They're not speaking to anyone. They don't want to go outside. And the technology rewards them for that sort of behavior, right? Looking for that instant dopamine fix. So essentially, the more they use, the more that they're going to become addicted. And this literally changes the physiology of the brain as well, especially in very young developmental years. So there's been studies, I have one study here about the association between screen time and children's performance by Madigan and colleagues. And basically, they've said that excessive screen time is associated with delays in development, right? It's there's been a preponderance of, a rise in cases of autism disorder, and a lot of people, they've had hypotheses. Has this been, because of the vaccines? Is it just because, there's more children nowadays? There's a lot of different risk factors, but I do think there is a strong correlation between the amount of time a child spends on the screen, right, because of these addictive algorithms, and the likelihood that they'll have some sort of social impairment in their life, right? I've spoken with a number of psychiatrists, clinical psychologists who agree, although there are some studies emerging now, longitudinal studies. It's hard to measure this because the technology is just developing so quickly.
Well,
So,
there are some clear studies that show that ADHD is linked with screen use.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, autism, I haven't seen, but ADHD, yes, there are some that correlate ADHD onset and symptom aggravation based on
Yeah.
screen time. And to talk about other effects, I have one study here, but many also point to the same thing, that screen time is giving less quality sleep, less time sleep,
Yeah.
eye strain. So problem with the eyes, as you're stuck always with the blue light and looking at screen at a short distance and not looking at the sunset or your friends playing outside.
Yeah.
And also with obesity, overweight, right?
Yeah.
So the more you're sedentary, it affects your mental health, your eyes, your sleep,
Yeah.
your weight. Those are real things. Now, knowing a little bit, and we can dig more on what the effect that is on children, because there's many-fold. What's the parent role in that, right? So they're children, you're giving them devices. What's that role? And just to preface that with also some other interesting stat, this study says that 82% of parents know what their children are watching on TV,
Hmm.
but only 60% or 56 are aware of what they're doing on their computer, and then less than 40 what they're doing on social media.
Hmm.
So,
Well, to answer your question, I'll use an anecdote myself. I went on vacation recently to Dubai, of all places, right? The social media influencer capital of the world. But really, I was there at a resort, and I was going to the beach every day. I love the beach. I love warm weather. I'm always in a good mood when I have like beach and sun. Those are the only things I need, right? And I'm like, this is the most spectacular place in the world. I didn't feel any inclination to go on my phone, to go on Instagram, to go on YouTube, because I was just fascinated by the environment. But at dinner time, the first night, I was with my partner at the time, and I hear this child screaming, across the room. We were on a patio, and there was this mother, this pregnant mother, with a little child there, and the kid's screaming. And I'm wondering, why is she not actually attending to the kid? Why is she not like helping, like, calm the kid down, like maybe give it a hug? And I see she's literally scrolling on TikTok on her phone, right? And the kid screaming ensues, and she gives the kid another phone that she pulls out of her purse, right? And all of a sudden it acts like a digital pacifier to the kid, and the kid stops screaming, and he's also scrolling, right? So in a certain way, there's two purposes here that technology serves. On the one hand, parents are stressed. I get it, right? Parenting is tough. It's really demanding. It's probably the most difficult job in the world. And so they're looking for some sort of outlet. They're looking for some sort of escape. Kids, right? They perhaps want that attention. They want that connection with their parents. But again, when they get the phone, it's so addictive, right, that they are scrolling as well. So it actually creates momentary ease from suffering for both people, for the parent and for the child. And look, I get it. It's the easiest solution in the moment. But if every time we got hungry, we went to McDonald's, right, we might not see the effects after one day. But if we go every single day to McDonald's and eat a Happy Meal, you're going to soon find out what the consequences of that behavior are, right? And I think the problem is that with technology, we haven't really spoken about or understood what those tangible consequences are. Of course, everybody agrees, yeah, fast food is unhealthy. Yeah, don't give your kids like too much fast food, right? But we don't really understand what is 10 hours on the iPad doing per day towards my 7-year-old, right? What is excessive screen time doing to my kids on the long term, right? And again, we're seeing a rise in ADHD-like symptoms, right? Distractibility, which makes it tougher for the parents. Parents are clueless. They don't know what to do, right? They're turning to mental health professionals, and a lot of mental health professionals don't understand how to solve this problem either. So it's getting into a very murky territory. It's becoming very complex, and as technology becomes more and more embedded in our lives. And right now, one of the reasons we started AWE in the first place is because we didn't see a viable solution for this problem on the market, right? And so we're bringing together some of the biggest, experts in the world on this topic to try to find a viable solution. It's like at the beginning of the fast food age, right? Fast food industry, people thought this is really convenient. It saves me a lot of time. I can go get a burger and fries, and I don't have to wait, and I can get back to doing the things that I want. Now we're in the age of a technological revolution with AI, with social media, all these things. And we're like, this is convenient, right? This is a great way to entertain myself. But you're inadvertently conditioning certain behavior over time, which you're going to see much greater consequence of if you give it to a child who's still in the developmental stage of their life.
Thanks, Mark, for the story and the science. In terms of parentings are lost. They don't know how to manage parenting today. We're still using. There is this famous triple P, so positive parenting program. Parents being positive role model and helping parents to get the skills and knowledge to help their children with language, social skills, emotional regulation,
Mm-hmm.
problem solving. this was invented in the 60s and 70s, right? So we're still using that, but it's not quite adequate. It does prevent some, it is a preventive measure to help like real bad dysregulation. But again, we see children dysregulated all the time when they don't have their phone, um, angry, screaming at their parents because they can't play their video games or don't have their phone or don't have the
Mm.
Wi-Fi. Um, and parents also themselves are stressed, right? So you mentioned, AWE is there to help parents mitigate some of those things with the new information, the new technology, awareness, and knowing the neuroscience and psychology on how to help the children in a positive reinforcement
Mhm.
way. We do have, humans like Mark and myself and others to help navigate and coach. And one thing that I've noticed is that there was this study that mentioned the problem with those parenting courses that are going on across the US and other places
Yeah.
that takes 10 to 12 weeks. And the biggest problem with that is that parents would love to be better parents. They would even pay money, but they couldn't get to the workshops physically. So up to 49% of parents didn't complete the program
Mm.
because of other commitments, right? So one of the idea that we have, tele coaching and telemedicine embedded in our fabric is to create the opportunity for any parents to be online and get what they want while maybe the kids are still around and there's other family issues or work issues to take care of. You can get this training online, and there's a lot of studies that show that the adherence rate for online training and coaching is definitely higher than in person. One other interesting study that talking about this study is called "Parent Perspectives on Their Mobile Technology Use: The Excitement and Exhaustion of Parenting While Connected." I
Mm.
love the name of the study. It is from Raditsky et al. And colleagues, 2016, and it looks at actually, we talk a lot about teens, but it looks about even before preteens. It's 0 to 8 years old, and parents in the study. It's a qualitative study, so they express how they feel. There is parents, single parents, mothers, fathers, couples, and I think there's two grandparents as well, so caregivers in general.
Mhm.
And they consistently express a high degree of internal tension regarding their own mobile tech use.
Mm.
Right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Parents are busy, they have to be on their phone, on their computer, and they feel the stress. And the three themes that came out of the study is that they have cognitive tension. So we talked a lot about multitasking. So they're trying to do 100 things at the same time with
Mhm.
the children, and that's stressing them. They also have emotional tension, right? So stress, anxiety. And the third one is tension about the relationship. So how is that affecting the parent and child relationship? So three big things that are being affected not by the children use, by the parents or caregivers use.
Yeah, and again, it's the most convenient solution in the moment. I don't think we're here to demonize the parents. We're just here to say, look, this is a natural consequence of the world that we're living in. There's lots of the world moves fast, right? And it's hard to keep up sometimes. And I think when you look for an outlet from the stress, the easiest solution is again to eat that Big Mac, right? When you're hungry. And if you're overwhelmed, right, you don't know what to do, it might be easy to just say shut up to your kid, honestly, instead of actually trying to listen to them and understand them because you're stressed. So you can't, in a lot of cases, yeah, it's hard to blame the parents uh, for the consequence of living in this highly digital society that we're in, right? And technology, again, is just becoming more and more entangled in our lives. But I wanted to talk for a moment a little bit more about what the lesson is. Like, what is this the way that we use our phones? What is it? What sort of behavior is it really conditioning? Because for on the one hand, what, like I said before, what you see most in adolescence is the reels, right? The Instagram reels, TikTok reels, the short form content that is being consumed, and essentially that's teaching these kids that um, information, right? Dopamine is readily available with no strong effort to attain that dopamine, right? It's just given to you, like handed to you on a platter. All you have to do is just open your app and it's there. And it's really, really enticing because, again, the algorithm knows exactly what these kids want to consume, what type of content. So it's teaching us actually to have a much shorter attention span, right? Because we're expecting dopamine to be delivered to us instantaneously when we go out into the real world, because that's how we've been conditioned when we look at our phones and we look at the reels. We have a much lower tolerance for waiting, for patience. And this is causing perhaps a lot of that inner tension that you described to before, right? The default mode network, right, is the part of the brain that is responsible for quote unquote thinking while you're not really thinking, random thoughts. So a lot of kids who have racing thoughts, right, who aren't able to focus, who are constantly distracted by this internal stream of consciousness, have an overactive default mode network. Coincidentally, you see overactive default mode networks in people who have
there seems to be some issue with your mic, Mark. So as you get that, thanks for the conversation and implication that might have for parents and for children. You mentioned the default mode. So that takes over the cognition, so deep thinking, and it also takes over the attentional network, so much less attention. And then we can see that in grades as well. So we know that it affects academic performance and social skills, right? So how can you also be patient with another human being when, on the reels, it's fun, always there, next, right? And it's not wait for your friend that's tying his shoe, or wait for this, or have a conversation about a topic that might not be as enticing as something that you you see in the algorithm knows that you're trying to have. Is your
By
mic
the way,
back on?
do you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. I was just saying, to finish my thought, that the default mode network, right? When people are just walking throughout their day and they have felt like, oh, what did I eat for dinner last night? Or like that asshole who cut me off on the road at 7 a.m. this morning on the way to work, or just random things that appear in consciousness without their control. That seems to become a lot more frenzied and chaotic, right? When you are constantly using social media. And this is also perhaps responsible for these higher levels of symptoms of ADHD that we're seeing in children. Because when you're asked to focus on a task that's boring, right? Focus on this PowerPoint presentation that the teacher's giving in class, do the homework. You've got all these thoughts, right? This going through your mind. You're like, how do I focus? I don't know how to do this, right? And so what do parents do, right? Again, the quickest fix solution. Hey, let's get this kid on ADHD medications. Like, let's prescribe him something, right? He's gonna calm down. Finally, instead of the digital pacifier, it's almost like, yeah, let me get him some meds, right? I'll tell you something. We don't really know either what the long-term effects of prescribing, really strong psychotropic medications to children are. And as the technology becomes much more embedded in these kids' lives, there's going to be a stronger dependence on these pharmaceutical drugs, right? And this is just a very vicious cycle that a lot of parents are in, just looking for the fastest, most convenient solution. I don't have time to go to an 8-week boot camp or a workshop for parents. I'm just going to go to the doctor and get my kid on Ritalin so that they can perform well in class. And then I'm going to be happy about that. A lot of parents I've spoken with, they make the conscious decision not to give their kids these strong drugs, despite the benefits that it could perhaps offer them, because they're unsure about what the consequences, long-term consequences could be. So it's a very, I would say, an interesting predicament that we're in. I don't think we could have ever seen ourselves walking into this trap.
Well, yeah, you talk about prescribed medication, and as you mentioned, sometimes they can be useful. There is some brains that have some deficit, and as we talked with our interview with Dr. Matika,
Hmm.
Um, Drugs are useful. They need to have a plan, and it needs to also be systemic, right? It can't just be take the drug and you'll be fine. There needs to be some support, some coaching, some
Yeah,
therapy, some goals, and it's hard. There is no magic
absolutely.
pill, even though they want to sell you like Ozempic or other things like that. That it's supposed to be magic, but no, it's a holistic way to, especially if you're thinking about a neurodeveloping child that is actually creating those connection for his future brain.
Hmm.
So we want to give him the best tools. And perhaps when we think about smart devices, tablets, smartphones, is it possible that giving that to children is also like giving them unknown pharmaceuticals or drugs or crack? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
used
mean,
to call it the BlackBerry the crackberry, right? When it
the
came out. So
crackberry. What
um,
happened to BlackBerry? I think they just
yeah.
totally.
So it's not far fetched that people
Yeah.
are hunchback and on crack just with different symptoms, right?
Yeah, yeah, and what worries me is that, like, there seems to be a lack of seriousness about approaching this problem from so many people, as if they're almost dismissing, yeah, screen time, it's a willpower problem, right? They just need to become more disciplined. And the fact is, like, no, like, especially for younger children, it's not a discipline. Just tell that to a kid. It's just a discipline problem, right? That's not going to go very far, right? And if you wouldn't give your kids alcohol or cigarettes at such a young age, why are you putting them on these addictive devices? I get it. Yeah, maybe you want to give your kid a phone so he's not left out, like so many, like he's not unlike the other kids at school, or you want to be in touch with your kid. But there's really simple solutions for that, right? You could give your kid like a flip phone, like the one that I grew up with. That's super boring, and just call them whenever you want. Or like even these phone-free schools. This is a movement that's becoming more and more common around the world. That kids arriving at the beginning of the day give up their phones, or they put them in a bag so that they cannot use them throughout the school day, because that is such a fundamentally important period in children's lives, right? School. And it's meant for socializing, getting to know your peers and understanding, like, where do you place yourself in the world, right? So I like
And
this
they think
strategy.
that the socializing now is in social media, right? And that's where the bullying occurs. That's where the comparison occurs. That's where the self-esteem is built through
Yeah,
something that's so unreal that how can you have good self-esteem if you're always looking at social media?
yeah.
Really, right?
Well, I think like
Um,
the most viewed Netflix series in the UK was Adolescence,
yeah,
this one.
adolescence.
It was for anyone who's watching who doesn't, I'm sure most people know about this or have heard about it. A young boy, 13-year-old, murders his classmate because of bullying on social media, essentially. And for me, what's fascinating isn't really the story of this show, but it's the data, the Netflix data on the show, making it that most highly watched show series in the UK, or even in Europe, I believe. Which means that this is a very relevant topic for many people, for parents who are worried about this problem. They just, again, they don't know what the solution is, per se.
I think they're both worried, but also sometimes not worried enough. I was speaking to parents, and most love what we do, and it's great. And but I hear also a lot of, yeah, we have problems in our family, but we're trying to handle it. And it's like I think you don't understand how unwell equipped you and your family are to deal with 6, 7 devices in the house
Yeah.
that are constantly, how many screens at a time in a living room? I don't know. And how is that working for you guys, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be much more awareness and solutions and discussion, and as well as technological solutions, right? So maybe Mark, you want to talk about the phone that
Yeah.
is a bit
Absolutely.
less addictive than what you might find out there.
Yeah. So, quick disclaimer: we are developing a phone device. What do they call it? Shout out to ourselves. Essentially, there are a lot of good devices on the market, right? That help mitigate children's social media usage. And like I said, phone-free schools, that is an increasing trend, right? Putting the phone in the bag. AWE, in partnership with Phonics, is developing a phone for children right now. We can attach a link to our Shopify site. For, I think at the moment we're only available in France and Germany, but essentially we've developed a phone that is medically approved in Europe, that is meant for adolescents and children. And essentially this phone, through operant conditioning, encourages, it is a smartphone, right? And our partner has developed the OS for this and encourages children to use the phone less, or to become less addicted to their phone. You know how much easier that would be on you as a parent, right? How much stress you don't have to deal with if your kid is not only just using the phone less, but they're having less emotional outbursts, they're more emotionally regulated, they're better able to focus. You know how much easier this would make your life as a parent, right? And again, you know, the phone that we've developed has been medically approved for the treatment of child and adolescent ADHD. And so that's one of the solutions. Again, another solution, using a lockbox. You know, you can find these on Amazon. There are a few other devices out there, but if you're looking for a way to just get in touch with your kids and encourage non-addictive behavior, the Phonics phone is a very good solution. But again, you know, it's up to you to do your own research and to understand perhaps what is the best solution for you and for your child.
So there's other solutions that we know in terms of creating boundaries. So for
Yeah.
instance, no phone in the bedroom,
Yeah.
no phone 1 hour before going to bed, no phone at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't really believe in this idea of only digital detox. You hear that everywhere, digital detox. You don't have a phone for a day or for a weekend. That doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Because you go back and you go right back at it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
You're not solving the core, the root of the problem, essentially, which is, you can change the behavior, but if you don't understand the reason that kids are using their phones in the first place, you're not going to get very far. You can take the phone away from your kid for a few weeks, but as soon as you give it back, they're going to just fall into the same cycle of behavior. And that's where psychotherapy becomes very useful, because you can help understand your kid's behavior from a cognitive perspective, right? Why do they always reach for the device? It's essential to like ameliorating the problem as well.
so there's another UK study,
Mhm.
more recent, 2025. We're talked about UK in Netflix. Now let's talk about science. So the study says that it suggests that practices that engage parents as informed partners rather than passive consumers may be beneficial to the family and increase trust, digital literacy, and cultural alignment may be some solution tracks, right? So, and when we talk about digital literacy, what does that mean? Do parents or grandparents know less about technology use? Probably, yes. You know, maybe not a 2-year-old, but I'm sure that a 12-year-old knows to use AI better than most parents, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about AI. Can we give some, you know, help to the audience that are having their tweens or maybe even younger than that, talking to their AI,
Yeah.
looking for entertainment or companionship, right? So
Yeah.
the AI can be fun or a friend to kids. And what happens when AI becomes your friend?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things to say there. The first thing that came to mind when you're mentioning digital literacy and the grandparents, I see, you know, in public transport, older people who are looking at videos that to me are clearly AI. They're clearly fake. Right? But these people don't even know it. They're looking at their phones and they're just like, "Wow," it's like a dancing goat on the stage of like America's Got Talent. They're looking like, whoa, oh my God, I can't. And I'm like looking at this like, are you an idiot? Like, don't you see that this is obviously fake? It's AI generated. But again, I think they have less of this digital literacy and they can't really distinguish reality from AI, right? Whereas the younger generations, they might be able to understand that. But with regards to your question about the role of AI in relationships as a friend, right? A lot of people are turning to AI as a therapist, even, right? Even children. And we had a recent case in the US, in Florida, where some parents are actually suing OpenAI because ChatGPT essentially encouraged a son to take his own life, right? And that's really scary. It's perhaps not on purpose, but through, you take somebody who has a clinical depression or has some sort of suicidal tendency, and you give them this chatbot essentially that they're using as a replacement for a licensed therapist or a friend that they confide in, or even a parent. And these LLMs have this sycophantic tendency to say like, yeah, Christian, you're right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you want to do that, like that might be the best bet. Like,
But
just go
AI
to
Mark,
ChatGPT.
I'm always right, no?
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm
absolutely.
beautiful
Of
and
course
I'm
you're
the
always
best,
right.
right?
How could I even question that? Yeah. But it does become a sort of dystopian reality when we don't turn to each other for help anymore, and we're turning to these LLMs because we think that they have the best answers ever, right? Just all hail.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
smarter than their parents and their teacher and everyone.
yeah.
And
Listen,
by the
like,
way, I don't have to have that uncomfortable conversation with my dad or my mom
yeah,
that I don't want to have, right?
yeah. What's scary though is like if you're having that uncomfortable conversation with ChatGPT, here's news for you. That data is actually on the internet, right? So if you are disclosing, I'm having an affair with my neighbor's wife or whatever, ChatGPT, is actually storing this data and sells this data to third parties. Hey, here's an advertisement for Ashley Madison, so you won't get caught with your neighbor's wife, right? Essentially, taking what you thought was very secretive information and turning into an advertisement that's meant for just for you. So imagine exactly what is happening to children when they're using AI to tell their secrets, to confide in, right? And this technology is turned on them.
Well, we have an AI team, and we'll be presenting some of the AI findings in some conferences in a few weeks in November in Vancouver and San Diego,
Hmm.
Society for Neuroscience and Canadian Psychological Association. Shout out to our scientific team. And we are using AI ethics that exists. AI ethics. I'm not sure everyone is using it, but we are definitely doing that. There is some other stories. You mentioned suicide in the U.S. There was some suicide in Brazil using LLM. Also, I didn't verify which case, but there was a claim that someone murdered his parents um, talking to AI. And there's also a lot of cases where AI will suggest to look at sexualized content or to have sexualized conversation, right? Which is not what you probably want with your kids. I mean, it's great to talk about sex, but probably with your parent or not with ChatGPT or whoever,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, look, AI is being used more and more in content creation nowadays, which means that a lot of the content that you see on social media nowadays is AI generated. And it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish, virtually indistinguishable nowadays. Like today, October 10th, 2025, there's AI content out there that looks essentially like me right now talking to the camera. Like the viewers could think like, oh, it's an AI Mark talking right now. But there's essentially influencers out there, AI influencers with an AI OnlyFans link in their bio that some person can stumble upon, click on the link, and then become a paid subscriber for this sexually explicit content that they think is real. And then they're talking to this AI avatar and saying like, "Oh, I'm in love with you. I'm getting this girlfriend experience." Whereas they're actually talking to probably some guy in who knows where, moderating this account and profiting off of it, profiting from this need for intimacy, this need for attention, right? So there's so many things that can be done with the content creation and with AI out there today. But a lot of people are using these AI models to manipulate others for their own financial gain.
Um, you know, I have this interesting passage here that says that even though your friendly AI respond in a warm, friendly way, they don't care about you or your children, and they're a very poor substitute for safe, stable, and nurturing relationship that children need to grow, right? So an AI chatbot, they can easily gain children and adults' trust, right? I know grown-up human beings that have relationship with chatbot. So they can build your trust because of that agreeableness. They can do
Mhm.
even more with your children. And then, you know, they don't check facts, they hallucinate. So you're going to teach your kids to just take for granted whatever is there without checking your facts, right? And then they don't know your full history. They might know your chat history, but they don't know the context outside of the chat's history of your children. So it's quite scary what little information and how powerful they can change your children's mind and psychology
Mhm.
without you knowing really what's going on, right?
Yeah. And again, we're talking about the effect on children here, right? I understand as much people talk about the benefits of AI. I think AI is revolutionary, right? The technological applications, it helps you and me, right, in our day-to-day work, and it helps millions of other people as well. But again, uh, we have to take into account the effect that it has on all people and the benefit that it offers you. You know, if you're a freelancer, remote worker, you work in the tech industry, you're a doctor, it is very different than the effect that it might have on a child, essentially, right? But the problem is that both of these groups have equal access to these LLMs, whether you are a 10-year-old curious about the world, or you are an W-2 employee in the United States of America that's using it to finish a presentation, right? Both of you have equal access. The intention with the use is different, perhaps with an employee who wants to get a specific task done or increase their productivity. It's very different than a child using ChatGPT in the way that they interact with it, because again, they're in this developmental period of their life where they're very curious and they have a lot of questions, and you can learn a lot with LLMs. But there is this pernicious aspect to manipulating behavior in these children that we really have to take into account here.
And we talked about lawsuits,
Mhm.
yet from what we see, the AI or the companies are not really responsible for their act. They have disclaimers. It's out of their control. Some people don't even know what the algorithms are doing anymore because they learn, right?
Mhm.
And we want to just again, we're not against AI. We're using AI. We're creating AI. We just want it to be known that the use of AI LLMs that are not ethically sound or responsible. I think I saw a study that almost 28% of people are using it at some point for therapy. Maybe not full therapy sessions, but asking questions about their mental health, right?
Mhm.
So that's a big number of people that are, perhaps the cost of a psychologist is a bit high, or a coach. Perhaps the access. I was reading a study. There's over 4,000 places in the U.S. that has less than one psychiatrist per 30,000 people, right? So you don't have access to mental health. You don't have the money for mental health. So you're
Yeah,
going to go with the easy, free route, right?
right.
But there's some danger with that.
We just got a question in the chat from Ali. Maybe we can go ahead and address this question. How would one go about using AI to manipulate someone to make money? How would one go about using AI to manipulate someone to make money? Well, thanks for the question, Ali. The way that this could be done, in my mind, right, and from what I've gathered from speaking with researchers and people who work in the industry, is more so using the data, right, that these companies gather from people, disclosing intimate information to them, to sell to third-party advertisers who are then using this perhaps to create much better advertising schemes that can be used to incentivize certain behavior, certain buying behavior. So we talked about before, AI content creators, right? AI content creators. There could be a beautiful influencer that you see on social media, And if you're a lonely 15, 16-year-old, and she's saying, Ali, you're my favorite boy, right? I love you. All you have to do is send me a, 2 Bitcoin, right? And I'll be yours forever, right? They don't know, right? And so they're going to sign up. They're going to sign up for the OnlyFans account, and they could perhaps become persuaded by these AI models to basically transfer them money. That is a form of manipulation in my mind.
That has been on the rise. That's been done for decades, but now with AI, it's even people can fake voice, image, can use that. There are some, we know that in certain countries like Myanmar, there are half a city of workers that are trying to scam people day and night.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer, and thanks for your questions and comments, Ali. The other one I'll respond talking about why David Hansen decides not to use AI because it stunts the learning. 100%. And David, Mark, and myself, we're still learning every day. Yet imagine children, they really need to learn every day. That's their formative years. And if you let them go free on, oh, I'll do my homework in 5 minutes instead of 5 hours
Yeah.
because I don't need to learn, then what skills will they have for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, I think it's become a game of cat and mouse between students and these educational institutions. Because I think when ChatGPT, first came out, students were using it to write their essays. Of course, I would have done the same if I was in their position. And then there was new companies that were developed to detect if you used an LLM to write your paper, right? Then they tried to update this, using prompts to say, like, don't sound like an LLM and write a paper for me, right? So again, we're looking for, humans have this tendency to just find the path of least resistance and just to go for that solution, right? And it's going to just go back and forth. But the effect that this has on people is, if they don't invest time in writing the paper, they're not learning from that process of trying to gather information, trying to summarize it, putting it together in a coherent paragraph or form. Yes, it's boring, but the boredom is important for your learning, for your development. And that's what these kids don't understand.
Well, I like I said, I use AI. I did not use AI at all to research all the articles that we're talking about today. I found them, I looked at them, I read them, and AI cannot replicate this level of knowledge and learning, right? Mark, you mentioned I have some lived experience, so I do have a son, which a few years ago in middle school told me that, hey, Dad, yes, I'm using AI. My friends are, we're cheating, and then I said, well, he said, I'm using it less than others. I actually tried to fix it. So I went over one of his, it was a research assignment. And, we went through it and okay, there were some mistakes and there were some things. So why don't you go look at that source, right? And I just want to give another, free advice for parents listening. There is a method called TECH, that are 4 pillars to help you navigate with your children tech use, right? So the first is talk, right? And as I had built or still have this great relationship with my son, he came to talk to me about it, right? Not just to chat GPT, not just to his friend. He actually came and said, hey, this is what's happening. So when you build that trust and that communication, talk is really important to figure out, what's the good or bad or ugly of the tech use. Second is education, right? So I had the opportunity to say, well, do you understand that by doing this, you will not learn what you're supposed to learn in this class? And that, maybe some of those results are not verified. Can you dig deeper and make sure they're real and get some more insight? And then the third one is C, right? Tech, TEC, is co-use. So, okay, let's go together and go prompt ChatGPT together. Use the technology with your children and figure out what they're using, how and what. Not to spy on them, just to say, hey, that's what you do. That's cool. Let's see how we do. Let's have fun together. And it's the same thing with TV. We talked about Netflix or Amazon. Watch shows with your kid and then challenge them. Is it an educational show, or is it misrepresenting the reality? And have discussions with your children about what they're watching, the content, the quality of the content, right? So social media per se is not bad. We're here on YouTube and LinkedIn. I think we're doing quality content. I think this has value. If your children are watching this, good. If they're watching some cat video on TikTok, maybe less useful. Um, so it's not only about the quantity of time or the device, but it's also the content. And the more you can co-use technology and see what content they're attracted to or their peers are, you can steer them maybe to say, okay, we can have X percent, 15% of fun content, which is just for fun,
Mhm.
and 15% of other content that's maybe learning, and the rest should be like moderate quality content, because we want to use technology to learn, to share, to feel the connection that we have as human being, and not to disconnect, right? The last one is H, so tech, and H is for house rule, but I will also use it for healthy limits, right? So house rule, we talked about time or space where you can have some rules. You can have some limits. They should be healthy. You don't want to bring the gauntlet and everything is not working. So just limits and just communication with the children. Those are four things that you can do today for free to help your family have those discussion about tech use.
Great tips. I think there's something, there's an uncomfortable truth to what people really search for on the internet. I mean, if Google was accurate, if they were telling the truth about what people are actually searching for, right? When you type in things on those, like the autofill results, you see like harmless, like just suggestions. But I think there's some statistic about like 70% of searches are actually for pornographic material, right? And so let's face it, like a lot of adolescents, they're going through puberty and they have these desires, and the accessibility to pornographic content is just easier than ever. So you can have a 12, 11, 12, 13-year old going online and essentially, you know, being offered this stuff on a platter. Over the years, they're becoming more conditioned to go to that source whenever they're feeling the urge or the inclination. So they are teaching themselves, or technology is conditioning in the way to satisfy their needs whenever they fulfill it, instead of going out into the real world and approaching a woman, or trying to find a textbook to prepare for the exam. They're just going to go on ChatGPT or these other LLMs to basically try to solve their problems. And really what we're talking about here is not on the one hand, we have the influence of the type of content they're watching, but again, the indirect effect here, right? Isolation and loss of connection to loved ones, right? Has very real consequences for these kids as well.
Thanks, Mark. And we are always trying to have a balanced approach. Ali is asking.
Yeah, love it, Ali. Thanks for the questions. When I was a student, my goals were to expend as little effort as possible and get good grades. And I was a relatively good student. I don't envy students who have to navigate this tech terrain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting more and more difficult. And then your colleagues are doing it. Maybe your colleagues studied less and used AI and have better grades. But I always explain that education is not about the grade. Working is not about the money. It's always about the learning, the presence, the purpose, right? So if you're doing something with purpose, the result will come or not, but you're winning anyways.
Try to tell that to a student, Christian. It's about the purpose.
I try.
They're
I don't
listen,
know
like,
if I'm convincing enough.
I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the US, there's a very strong culture of achievement, right? You want to be the best in your class. You want to do anything to get by. It's a very highly competitive environment. And a lot of parents put immense pressure on their kids to get good grades. So you're going to do anything you can, right, to beat out the competition, because they feel like they're competing against their classmates. When I was in college, right, midterms and finals periods were the times where people were buying on the black market these ADHD medications illegally, right? They would go to somebody who was prescribed and they would say, hey, could I buy some Ritalin for me? Could I buy some Vyvanse? Could I buy some Adderall, right? Because I need to study for my exams. I need to get a good grade, right? So it's the culture that's really reinforcing this, that's encouraging this sort of behavior, right? So we can't, yeah, we can blame technology, but we also have to just understand like the societal pressures that are on these kids to perform and to achieve and to be the best, right?
Yeah, I didn't have access to Ritalin. I just had a 100 milligram of caffeine pill, which
Oh
made my
yeah,
heart beat as much
big
as
cup
if
of
I was in love.
coffee.
But yeah, but yeah, I had sleepless nights studying at those physiology and neuroscience exam. Fun stuff. So yeah, all the best to the students right now that have to navigate that. Thanks, Ellie, for another question. I also wanted to go in terms of like positive things that are going with parents right now, right? So they have this big dilemma that is tech, but there's also some good things, right? So they have access to more information. They can learn how to become better parents, which 20 years ago they could, but maybe a book at the library or something. Now they have lots of information on parenting. They're maybe listening today and learning some things about parenting, and they can go online and get courses instead of going in person. They
Mhm.
can have communities to share their struggles, and they can also, like the promise is, in theory, more connectivity means strong emotional connections, right? So you can be more connected with your kids, even though they're in college in a different city. You can FaceTime them or see them more often. At school, people, their kids, oh, like, parents, relax, your kid is fine. You
Yeah,
don't have to be checking where they are, the whereabouts 24/7 and Google
yeah,
or other
parents.
device where their location is, right? Um, we did that for thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands a year, and we're pretty okay.
Yeah,
But this kind of overprotecting their physical safety when actually it's online that they're not safe, right? We talked about pornography, bullies, sexual predators,
yeah,
and one of the good things that AWE's phone is also going to do is not put more spying on children, but actually give them tasks to do and have pretty strict pornography filters that are updated. And the big difference is that when you get caught doing something illegal, you get punished. You don't use the phone for X amount of time, and the parents get notified.
yeah,
So no cheating. If you use AI in exam, we'll check you if you're doing something wrong on your phone or not, or using too much of those things. You'll have some feedback.
yeah.
But another positive thing, just to continue, is that parents now have the access to remote and hybrid work. They have more flexible schedule, so they
Mhm.
can also longer parental leave. I took a year of parental leave with my son as a father, which allowed me to travel the world. So technically, you can be more present with your children in 2025 than you were when you were doing a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 job, and you didn't see your kids the whole day, and they didn't see you, and right. Um, but in reality, is that now even in the home, you're there, but you're not present, right? People are still on their device. Kids are on their phone. You're on your
Mhm.
phone. You have three or four screen, and we talked, already about the phenomena of phubbing, which is snubbing someone with the phone, right? And that could be for children. That could be even as a couple. You're with your girlfriend, and both are watching their phone, and you're not present, right? So those things that are the promise of connection are actually often the cause of disconnection and discord, right? We talk about phone conflict. You want to elaborate on that a bit, Mark?
Yeah, well, again, another story comes to mind. I think all of this got out of control first during COVID when a lot of the schools shifted to online learning modules. And I visited a neighbor of mine, father, mother were working from home, right? And kids were on Zoom, classroom setting, but they weren't paying attention to the computer. They were off playing games somewhere in the house. And of course, they are not going to stare at a screen and try to learn something all day. Um, So that's a critical period that a lot of kids miss out on, right? They're not learning in the classroom setting, right? You can't just put some kid in front of a screen and expect them to learn and to be able to focus. It's just not realistic. And I think that's where a lot of these uh, consequences began to form, right? When you had, yeah, you have the family that's close together. That's amazing. I agree. You don't have to drive 40 minutes to work. You get to spend more time with your kids. Fantastic. But if the kids are in the same position, you shouldn't have the same expectation on your kids using their computers as you do on the parents, right? Very different developmental periods of their lives. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. I'm very glad that we've gone back to normal schooling methods, and even a step further, as I said before, these no phone in school movement that we're seeing is a very encouraging sign
Yeah, we have
for
that in Quebec, Canada, one of the first
guys.
provinces to have phone-free school. It just started last month. So my son is no phone, and that's great.
Yeah,
I do still want to say that there is a possibility that children might not use it at school, which is good for learning, but they might also overcompensate at
yeah.
night and in the weekend. So it's not just the school. There's a whole 24-hour and 7 days a week, and there's the summer. So there's still some more awareness to be done, but that's a great start. I agree.
How
And
are they
for
enforcing it at your son's school?
so yeah, you either don't come with a phone or you leave it in your locker the whole day.
You leave it in your locker, and so what's the punishment for using it? They just take it away from you?
Yeah, my son says that some of his friends have already gotten caught. Yeah,
Okay.
teenagers will be teenagers.
Ali just posted a comment. The school I am working at also just banned phones. It is amazing. Um, yeah, I'm sure it is. I'd be curious, Ali, like if you've seen what sort of differences you've seen, why it's become amazing now, right? I can only imagine that like it's easier for kids to like focus. Um, but I do see some students glued to their laptops now, though. But it's an improvement, right? Sign of overcompensation for sure. Um, yeah, when the kids get back, if the phone's still there, they might be like, oh, finally, I've been waiting all day. I can use my phone again. I can go on TikTok again. So it might solve the problem temporarily for a specific period of time, which is really great. It's an improvement. But usually kids will spend time together after school, right? They'll get together, they'll do something. And if they don't do that because they're on their phones instead, that could become a problem. For the most
My son goes 2 hours with his friends, walk to the YMCA, does some
uh,
sport, and pretty
that's great.
healthy habits so far, but not all of them are doing that. Just wanted to quote another scientific study that says, so that's Yadav and Chakraborty 2022,
Hmm.
that state that children are progressively becoming addicted to technology as cell phones, tablets, computers, and other devices are used on a large scale. That's 2022, right? Before AI. And Kurt, 2023, says that this addiction can lead to social isolation, decreased academic performance, difficulty sleeping, health problems such as headaches, eye strain, and emotional issues such as depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
So that's a lot that children get to experience or be have the chance to be affected by, right? So technology as a parent, and if you're letting the name of the podcast today, if you're letting technology becoming that third parent, do you think that he's going to be a good parent?
How important is the role of parenting? Right? That's the question that you have to ask yourself.
Very good. And one other thing that modern parenting is doing is that we have now better responsibility between the genders. So fathers are parenting more, especially here in Quebec.
Hmm.
And in 2020 study mentioned that fathers now spend an average of 3 hours per workday on childcare activities. Right. So all the fathers out there doing a good job. Let's do that, but
Keep
also
it
let's
up.
be conscious of the tech use as we're fathering and doing
Yeah.
all the stuff.
Yeah. No, shout out to all the fathers out there. that are spending more and more time with their sons and with their kids. I just wanted to add something. So we've been, for the most part, we've been talking about the negative effects of phones on and computers on kids. I had the chance to spend time with a really close friend of mine the past couple of days who he works for Google, and they're developing glasses that are offering people a lot of the capabilities of smartphones, right? So you'll get notifications and it'll have some sort of AR feature, it's an augmented reality feature built into the glasses so that you can see things like in the world and be able to interact with them. It's also going to have the capability of modifying behavior, right? If you want to perhaps encourage somebody to abstain from alcohol, right? The glasses could help reroute you, like when you're on the way to work, put you on a route that's avoiding bars, for example. So you're going to have a lower likelihood to drink again, right? But essentially, these glasses can send you notifications, and you have a specific behavior that you would like to achieve, and you can program that in the glasses. That's awesome. The thing that I would worry about is that if there are third parties getting involved in sort of incentivizing behavior in a real-time level, right? Normally you have to look at your phone, but these glasses are on you all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interacting with you, ubiquitous, omnipresent, all the time. We don't know. I mean, there is potential there, but also some worrying possibilities.
You're talking about third party. I have another study here that says that 1 out of 4 parents report using a third party application to manage child device use, right?
Mhm.
So parents are using things. There are some embedded things in the big players that says they have parental control. We know that that doesn't really work. There's third party
Mhm.
things that also are monitoring, and those are kind of like big brother stuff, right? You want your kids to feel that they're being monitored all the time, and then find out that you don't build trust. We talked about trust, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about the triple P, positive parenting, right? What we're seeing with tech use is that it's not positive. It's
Mhm.
conflict. It's always, hey Johnny, can you leave your whatever to come at the table? Have you stopped this? Oh no, mom, this. Oh no, dad, this, right? And the idea is that we want to create technology and have services and help parents really have a positive parenting strategy in 2025, 2026. That's a bit different than the positive psychology for decades ago. And also wanted, before we leave, I promised someone in our marketing team, which I will not name, to talk about her story that she shared this week. She's a parent, and she was shocked, as waiting um, for a child doing some sports activity, and seeing 2 other parents with their kids, um, and for about 2 hours, the kid just on his phone, and that's it. No monitoring, no talking, no, and the parents doing their thing, and she just wanted to express and share that story to say, like, that's the state of the world, and whichever parenting type you are, or awareness, everyone is guilty of some of those behaviors, some of the time, some more than others. um, but that should not be the norm. Yeah? If you see that, you should be shocked like she was. It should be like, wake up, what can we do as a society to parent better, to talk better, and to create those social skills that we need in life, right?
Yeah, it's like we've sort of sleepwalked into this problem and we're just trying to figure out how to get out of it. So I don't blame the parents, right? It's just, again, consequence of rapidly developing technology and not taking into consideration the human consequences.
Yeah, it's not about the blame, the shame, or the judgment. It's just bringing awareness and letting parents and adults and everyone knows that there are tools, there are solutions, there's are communications, and it takes time. You're not going to change your kid's behavior or your behavior in a day, in a week.
Mhm.
It takes awareness and it takes practice, and we know neurobiology. It takes some training of those hormones, of those neurotransmitter, to create new pathways that will, at the end, make you happier and more connected, bring you more joy. But that might be painful for the transition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
So thanks again, Mark. Any last word? Thanks again for Ali and all the other people that were live on our channel. We appreciate the interaction and comments. And we're here to respond to questions. You can also reach us, as you saw, on our different social media, on our website. We have lots of information. We have some free blogs. We have a newsletter. We have a Substack. Marketing team is doing a lot of stuff. And Mark, any last word before we see you on next Friday?
Yeah,
We have a special guest next Friday, my friend, Dr. Bonnie Lee, that will be here next Friday. So tune in if you're here today and share the word. Last words for you, Mark.
To any parents watching this, don't be hesitant to look for solutions. AWE, if you visit our website, we offer a lot of free resources to get started on this path to make sure that your children aren't overusing their screen and that they're going to turn out to be, balanced, mentally healthy, not strongly depressed or anxious or have high levels of ADHD-like symptoms. So feel free to reach out on our website. You can set up a call with us if you are concerned about your child, or if you have questions, maybe we can offer some answers. And I will be attaching a link later on for our Phonics phone. If you're located in Europe, you can order it now. US, Canada, we are coming soon. And yeah, I wish all the parents watching this best of luck.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks again for everyone watching live or watching later. Always a pleasure to chat with you, Mark. See you next week. Have a great weekend. And for those in Canada, happy Canadian Thanksgiving. Enjoy the long weekend.
Bye, everyone.